Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today in the latest episode of INQlusive, the Inquirer webinar series in partnership with PMFTC Incorporated, produced by the Philippine Daily Inquirer, Inquirer Business, and Inquirer.net. My name is Dax Lucas. I am a journalist with the Inquirer's business section, and co-moderating this session today with me is our very own subject matter expert, our agriculture reporter, Ms. Carl Ocampo. Carl?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I am Carlo Campo. So, as the title of this webinar suggests, we will be talking about the agriculture value chain. So, most of us are familiar with the production and consumption side of agriculture, but there are a lot of factors in between that affect prices, supply, and even consumption. So, we'll explore all of these with the help of our speakers today.
Okay, as you can see at the bottom, our webinar is entitled Agri in Focus, Agriculture, Food Chain, and Food Supply. And what we want to do today is to give you, our audience, a look forward. Everyone already knows all about the so-called new normal, what is going to happen. What we want to do here today is to tell you, to give you insights on how it will look like. And to do that, we brought two very interesting subject matter experts, the ultimate subject matter expert as far as the Philippines is concerned. Um,
Right.
our first speaker, who will be coming on shortly, is clearly an expert in the field. He spent his whole life in the field of agriculture. He is the former Director General of the International Crops for Semi-Arid Tropics and is now the head of the country's Department of Agriculture. So without further ado, let us welcome Secretary William Dar. Good afternoon, sir. Magandang hapon.
Good afternoon, Dax. Good afternoon, Carl. Good afternoon, Bong.
Good afternoon, sir.
Take it away.
Magandang, magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Yes, maganda po itong ating topic ngayon. Agri in Focus, Agriculture Food Chain and Food Supply. Alam naman natin itong last 5 months of the year, of this year, we have been battered in many ways. Let's start with the African swine fever continuing, okay, which started last year. Let's also understand Taal volcano erupted this January. Then came the pandemic for COVID-19 starting in February. And up until today, we are just maybe in the middle of the war against COVID-19 pandemic. And you also include the uh, typhoon that has come in May, the typhoon Ambu. So in general, with all this confluence of socioeconomic risk and shocks, I would call that yes, there have been perfect storms, so to speak, affecting agriculture and food industries in the country. The growth of the sector during the first quarter has been, you know, it contracted to 0.4%. And if you compare it to industry contracted 3%. So, and services was the only one that grew the level of 1.4%. Now, if you also bring in inflation, the last 2-3 months, we believe there have been a good management of food inflation in many ways as part of the total inflation factors. So I would characterize the sector as one that has been badly hit. We can see the full force impact of COVID-19 pandemic during the second quarter and onwards till the end of the year. And we then targeted when I started in August last year, we were targeting 2%. And if you ask me that question now, I believe uh, it's too challenging to really reach that level. But yeah, we have some projections of growth this this year, and looking forward that from a survival stage where we in terms of the pandemic, we are starting to reboot as well, plan to reboot Philippine agriculture. And so we have a good ideas of the stimulus package for Philippine agriculture moving forward. So maybe I have to stop there. We are not surrendering. We are there to continue this war. We are there to nurture the path with which we would like to reboot Philippine agriculture today.
Fantastic. Thank you. Carl?
Mhm. Thank you, Secretary Dor, for that brief overview. So now for our second speaker, we have the president of the United Broilers Raisers Association, which is the biggest organization in the country for poultry stakeholders. So please welcome Mr. Elias Bong Inciong. Good afternoon, sir.
Magandang hapon sa atin lahat. Mr. Secretary,
Good
magandang
afternoon.
hapon ulit. Dax. I am, all of us, we're all glad that there is a plan to reboot, and we support the Secretary on his effort. We acknowledge the challenge he has had since he accepted the position of Secretary of Agriculture. ASF, the transition from the transition of the law, the implementation at the lower half of 2019 of the Rice Tarification Act, then the typhoon, the volcano, the Taal volcano explosion. We acknowledge that and we acknowledge his efforts. But moving forward, we are hoping in the process of the reboot, we'll take a look at the framework. Because so far, in the last 20 years or so, agriculture has been set aside. It is not a priority sector. Because the economy, the economists of this country has been relying on the remittances of our overseas workers, on the BPO revenues, and on tourism revenues. And agriculture has never been a priority in the last 2 decades or so. And my evidence for that is the Agriculture Fisheries Modernization Act, which was passed, I think, in 1997. It was never funded. It was never implemented. A simple a thing as a national information network, an information system, so that people can make rational decisions based on data on supply and demand. It was never done. These are basic things, and if you benchmark with our peers in ASEAN, and also if you benchmark with the best in the world, the United States and Europe and China, they have a different attitude towards their agriculture. It is unfortunate that what has triumphed in the last 2 decades has been ideology, not a practical look at the ideology in the last 2.5 decades has been free trade, globalization, all right. Has it been good for us? We need to review, we need to assess, because there will be a lot of changes in the next decade or so. The Bank of America it came out with an analysis or a forecast on what will happen in the next 15 years. It said that there will be more changes in the next decade and a half in technology, in the way of doing things, than in the last 100 or couple of 100 years. And with changes, you will have risks. And if we still rely solely on the market and the government will not have active participation, the way governments in India, in China, in the United States, in Indonesia, in Thailand, in Vietnam especially, we will be left behind and probably we will have serious problems. We need more of benchmarking on and a practical approach to things and less of ideology. So far, the approach to agriculture is ideology, free trade, import liberalization. What has happened? There is no success to speak of in agriculture. Our traditional exports like coconut, it is suffering. Sugar is no longer a major export of ours. We need winners, and to have winners, you need an ecosystem of government, the academe, and industry. And we are hoping that because I am sure that with the Secretary's international experience, he would know all of these things. He will be well aware. He was based in India for a long time, in the Indian subcontinent for a long time. He would know how different it is, how different the attitude of government has been here when compared to our neighbors and the more successful countries. There is this great hope that with this crisis in COVID, there will be an opportunity to move forward. And there is this hope that Secretary Dar will be able to lead us. He only has about a little more than 2 years to do it, but I am hoping that he will be given a chance by the economists of this country to do what needs to be done. If it is more of an ideology, I can offer the good secretary my sympathies in advance.
All right. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you so
Inciong.
much, sir,
I
for
guess
that
everyone
interesting
is
statement.
that's right. Everyone is excited for
Sir Mo.
that reboot of the agricultural sector that the secretary has mentioned, and Mr. Inchong clearly has some ideas. Well, now that we've introduced our panel, let's just dive in right into the questions, because I'm looking at our Facebook feeds and marami ng questions and there are a couple of comments here asking na Tagalog naman please. So we'll throw in we'll do it multilingual for our audience also para maintindihan.
Sige po.
Okay, perfect. So for our audience, if you have questions, kung may mga tanong kayo, please send them in. Pwedeng sa Facebook or pwede kayong mag-comment dito sa feed namin, and we will ask those relevant ones. Okay. Let's just go back briefly, Mr. Secretary. As we know, the ongoing pandemic has played a very important role in shining the spotlight on agriculture this last 3 months or so. From where you stand right now, could you give us a few very quick insights into what went wrong and what went right, more importantly, in the agricultural sector during this crisis?
Okay, good. You know, in all these meetings with the IATF, I can now mention publicly that I fought tooth and nail. I mean, in presenting the case for continuous food production. Because I believe that without food during such a pandemic, then we don't have the chance to stand to win this war against COVID-19. So, sabi ko, the threat of hunger is as real as the threat of COVID-19. So, huwag natin i-discontinue yung food production efforts. Maybe during the first 2 weeks, talagang mahirap kasi yun nga, bago din itong war against the virus. So we said, okay, let's try to have more understanding why we cannot operate continuously food production activities. So by the end of second week, we said it has to be continued. Food production, fishing activities must really be there, to have enough supplies of food during this war. So, in short, nabigyan naman ng pagkakataon to open up in skeletal force, farming activities, fishing activities, and even in the movement of cargos, talagang pinaglaban namin yan. Medicine, food, anything about medicine, anything about food, ay talagang walang do not hamper, do not restrict the movement. But between the policy guideline enunciated by the ITF vis-a-vis the implementation, there have been distortions in effect, paralyzing movement of food supplies in some ways. By after 1 month, sinabi ko, dapat idagdagan natin yung skeletal force, hindi na lang skeletal force, but optimum operation for food production. So pinayagan naman, and even to highlight again the initial pains that we have and continue to have in regard to the movement of food supplies and medicines, but more on food supplies. That's our concern now. Ang dami, even by the end of the first month of the lockdown, talagang there were eager beaver local government units, much more in the barangays, that clamped down the movement of food products. So talagang ito yung binabantayan ko sa ITF, mabuti. By the end of 1 month, mayroon pag-aaral ng NEDA with other departments, including DA. And part of that would be to study to what effect has this lockdown given the sector of agriculture. And there are two findings. 15% of the farmers and fishers were disturbed in their farming operations. Disturbo sila. Meaning nawala yung pagsasaka, yung poultry production, na-disturba. Then another finding is 35% of the farmers and fishers, including those in the poultry raising, 35% of them were not able to market their produce. So yun, isama mo pa yung mga, of course, restaurants have been not operational. So ang dami yung impact sa agrikultura, sa farming sector. Now, another thing that we put a good handle because of this movement issue, mayroon na kaming inilunsad in a big way yung Kadiwa. So ang daming mechanisms, Kadiwa Express, Kadiwa Online, Kadiwa and this has helped us in many ways with the help of the private sector partners, including that of our advocacy with the local government units to buy their food packs distribution coming from their domestic farmers. So ang LGUs were able to buy, as we have been able to monitor, 2.4 billion pesos worth of sales. And for the Kadiwa facilitation, we have more or less about 3.6 billion pesos of sales. So total 6 billion ito yung problema talaga natin. Kulang ang mga warehouses, cold storages. Ito yung impacting on the poultry industry, for example. Yung mga extra produce dyan na hindi na move ay dinadump na lang somewhere. So talagang patong-patong po yung problema. So this is one area we need to have a good handle in the future, yung food markets and the food logistics.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. So basically, it's very clear right now that the problem is not on the production side per se, or if there is some very minimal, but it's really what comes after that, the distribution and the that's been made very clear. Carl?
So maybe Mr. Inciong could also want to share the common problems that the poultry sector encountered during the lockdown, sir.
Sabi nyo, pwede managalog eh.
Of course.
Sure, of course.
Unang-una, kailangan nasa kamalayan natin pag sinabi natin kung anong kahulugan ng agriculture. Kasi medyo pasensyahan nyo na kung may hugot ng kaunti, minamaliit na ng ilang dekada ang agrikultura. Yung primary agriculture is about 10%, 10% ng GDP. Yung agri-processing, yung the manufacturing side of it is another 10%. This is according to Rolando D. of the UAAP.
Sir?
Then the agro-services...
Question
yes.
no, sir. Pag sinabi nyong primary agriculture, anong ibig sabihin nun?
Yan yung basic, yung farming, fishing, yung pag-alaga ng manok, ng baboy, yung pangingisda, pag-alaga ng tilapia, ng dalag, yung mga ganon.
Claro.
Pero yung processing, pagka yung manok ginawa mo ng marinated, medyo processing na yun. O di kaya ginawa mong chicken breast chunks in can, processing na yun, manufacturing na yun. Yung agro-services, yan na yun. According to Dr. Rolando D., yan kasama na dyan yung food service industry. Yung mga fast food, lechon manok, mga ganon. And yung logistics, warehousing, even financing. Kaya nung nag-COVID tayo, nung nag-lockdown tayo, easily 35% ng GDP affected. Now, ano yung impact sa amin? Nung COVID, yung sa movement ng goods, in fairness to the IATF and the DA, maliwanag naman from the very beginning yung guidelines eh. Free movement of cargos. Ang problema doon sa checkpoints, lalo na sa LGU level, maraming pilosopo. Sasabihin, free movement of cargos, may driver. There was a time na kinabahan kami na hindi na magdi-deliver ng mais yung mga tiga Isabela, hindi na magbababa kasi yung mga truck nila hindi pinababalik kasi kino-quarantine rin yung mga driver. Ayaw na paalisin. Halimbawa, nag-deliver sa Batangas o sa Rizal, ayaw na pabalikin. At kuminsan, mas malaking problema, ayaw na tanggapin doon sa Isabela o doon sa ibang probinsya na dadaanan niya. Meron din namang pagkakataon, in fairness to the DA, pinaglaban yan. Tapos, isa pang pinaglaban ng DA dyan, nagtagumpay naman yung movement of essential personnel or essential persons, yung may-ari ng mga farms, yung mga farm workers, mahalaga yun. Nung unang 2 linggo, maraming hindi nakapagpasweldo na mga small farms. Hindi makapunta yung magpapasweldo eh. Kaya maraming suliranin nun at malaking tulong ng departamento diyan, yung liderato ni Secretary Dar, liderato rin ng DILG, si Secretary Anyo malamig, marunong kumausap ng mga LGUs at nais ko rin bigyan ng pagkilala 2 tao. Sa DA, si Assistant Secretary Christine Evangelista. Sa DILG, si Undersecretary Retired General Bernie Florese. Hanggang ngayon yan, tumutulong. Kasi meron pa rin ngayong problema eh. may mga LGU talaga at every step of the way, pahihirapan ka. Ngayon, ang issue ngayon, yung testing. Pag kaya magdi-deliver, eh, hahanapan ng test, ng certification kung na-test na for COVID. Eh, hindi naman required yun. Hindi naman required. And then meron din kaming kaso na ilang cases, nag-deliver ng dressed chicken, naka-reefer ban, refrigerated ban. Eh, natural lang naman, pagka magdi-deliver ka ng cargo mo na ganyan, meron driver, at least may dalawang helper na mag-unload. Eh, meron piloso po sa checkpoint, ang gusto, yung isang helper, doon mananatili doon sa refrigerated van, hahayaan maginaw doon sa loob ng refrigerated van. Yung mga ganong kaso. Pagkatapos yung sa pag-deliver ng feeds, may mga lugar sa Central Luzon, medyo OA yung mga barangay, nilagyan ng panambak yung daanan. Yung sa ilalim pa naman ng mga arko nila, welcome arcs. Nilagyan ng 2-3 dump trucks ng filling material. Maraming OA nung panahon ng lockdown, yung sa panimula. Eh, pero ganun pa man, nagpapasalamat kami doon sa mga tao na tumulong. Yung mga nabanggit ko mga opisyal, malaking utang na loob namin dahil outstanding conduct. Dahil pag nag-report kami, talagang alam namin na may kumausap doon sa problem area at hindi tinitigilan. Mr. Secretary, you can relay my respects to your officers, especially the one I mentioned.
Opo.
Yun lang.
Opo.
Maraming salamat, Mr. Inciong. Well, you're in the right forum kasi kausap nyo mismo ang magdadala ng concerns niyo sa IATF mismo. Maraming salamat. I mean, clearly, in the agriculture sector, in the poultry industry, along with many other sections of the economy, the application of the rules has been very uneven. Well, not because of malice on their part, I'd imagine, but because tulad ng sabi ni Mr. Inciong, yung iba talagang overzealous lang, ano. May iba pilosopo. Mr. Secretary, if I may just ask you, what kind of changes should we expect in the broader agriculture industry going forward? And siguro sa specific sectors, ano? Ano ang magbabago sa agrikultura ngayong naranasan na natin itong COVID-19?
Moving
Okay.
forward, yes.
Yeah, let me start from the introductory remarks ni Bong. Sabi niya ay ang agrikultura ay set aside all these years. Tama yon. Set aside kasi it was not properly invested. It was not given the due share it needed to develop and grow the sector. So talagang underinvested, underdeveloped ang sektor ng agrikultura. Now, having said that, siguro with all of us here, like the likes of Attorney Iniciong and all of the other stakeholders, and including partners from media, to always, highlight the importance of, developing the sector, because food is vital for that matter. Now, having said that, so we need now to unlock the potential of the sector in many ways. And unlocking the sector calls for, having to have a good development framework to pursue the various plans and programs and projects. Now, I don't know if I have time to show you the new Philippine Agriculture and Food Development Framework that have been developed this last 1 month already as a result of planning for the future, anticipating for the future. So ito ay pwede namin ipakita
Yes,
kung
please, go ahead.
marapat. Okay, nandyan na. Okay. So, I hope it is visible from your end. At makikita po lahat. Yan, nakalabas na
Okay,
po.
we see it.
This framework has now been also endorsed, approved by the IATF about 3 weeks ago. So in the vision itself, we need as a country to be resilient, the people to be resilient, and the sector to be resilient to really survive and grow again. So the vision now stands as a food secure and resilient Philippines with prosperous farmers and fisher folk. Now, for our socioeconomic recovery and resiliency, we need to look at 3 stages. We are now presently at the survival stage. Hanggat yan, until we win this war against pandemic, then we will be in that stage. And nakikita ko po na itong the rest of the next 6 months, nandyan pa yung survival stage natin. So agriculture will have to be given fillip even during this pandemic period. And so we are asking additional budget from
How much,
government.
sir?
Well, what we have now received is 8.5 billion pesos for the rice resiliency project.
Yes, sir.
Now, just to highlight that case, overall, we would like under this survival stage and much more during the rebooting stage to really increase our food sufficiency level in all the commodities that we are working. And I have always highlighted 2 basic strategies. Number one is to further develop the domestic industries, and so increasing domestic production and productivity. Then anything that we don't produce here, we have just to secure it from other countries. So that's the whole direction of elevating the food sufficiency level. And take the case of rice, and with the 8.5 billion pesos that we are getting from a present level of 86% rice sufficiency level, that project that we are now getting and implementing this wet season planting for rice will bring us to another 7% more. So 86 plus 7 brings us to 93% rice sufficiency level for this country. Now, can we do much more in the future? Why not? But we have now to see to it that the cost of producing commodities have to be lowered down. So improving efficiencies and every aspect, employing good agricultural practices for that matter. And there are only 2 major sources of increasing productivity, and that's increase using of the use of the best of science and technology to increase productivity per unit area. So plus combination of that with capacity building of the farming sector, the fishing sector, and many other components like credit. The other side would be to open up more agricultural lands to have additional hectareages for food production. So ito, rebooting will be the way forward. And we submitted the stimulus package of 66 billion pesos, and hoping that some of that will also be restarted this year. But looking at for what we can do for 2021, we submitted a total budgetary proposal of 240 billion pesos. 240 billion pesos from the present level of 65 plus 7, that's 73. So times 3. We just submitted last Monday evening the budget proposal for DA for 2021. So ganun po, hoping na yung budget na ito times 3 will now pave the way to putting up the food markets, the food logistics, and increasing and expanding the various banner programs to include livestock and fisheries. Kasi livestock and fisheries have been underfunded all these years. So we are increasing the budgetary support for these basic commodities.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. That looks like a very well thought out plan. I especially like the 5-point strategy that you outlined, especially modernization and the consolidation of farms. I hope these plans don't miscarry going forward. Carl, you had some questions?
Yes, sir. So since we're in the matter of changes, or no, we're speaking of changes in the new normal. So, what would be the role of technology, sir, here in the emerging economy? So, paano po kaya natin ma-integrate yung mga small farmers and entrepreneurs? So, will they be able to participate in this new economy? So, siguro, sir, let's start with Secretary, and then maybe we can get the insight of Mr. Inciong also.
Okay. Technology, and if you define technology, Carl, I understand you are talking about digital or information technology. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Digitalization, modernization. Yes, sir.
Yes. Nasabi na ni Atty. Iniciong, yung modernization may batas pero wala naman budget na binigay. So modernization will continue to be one of the primary strategies. And part of modernization is the use of information technology. Nasabi na rin ni Atty. Iniciong na when you have good data management, then you can have informed decision making. So yun ang gagawin po natin kasi walang-wala ngayon dito sa DA yung good databases. And nakita ko yan at si Atty. Iniciong nagsabi, day one, nung nagkita kami, yun ang una niya sinabi na let's build up yung data management for all the commodities in agriculture, which we are now starting to do. So digital agriculture will be key. It will be part of the new normal. Even e-commerce for that matter, yes. Even in our farmers registry, nahihirapan kami ngayon, nalulusutan pa rin kasi maraming mga barangay captains, we in cahoots with the agricultural extension workers, padding the list and including in the list even non-farmers so that they can get amelioration like what have happened itong financial subsidy for rice farmers. So digital technology, we now have even signed an agreement. I mean, representing agriculturist planters products with Satsure, which is a Swiss agency utilizing satellite technology to look at damages after typhoons or after droughts or any major catastrophe impacting on agriculture. So satellite technology will be piloted in a good number of areas, and we believe that's the future. Even all these aspects, remote sensing, drone technology, Lahat po yun. Ako, I've been advocating that even before I came here.
Fantastic. Attorney Incyong.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Can
What
you,
insights on
Carl,
technology?
you were garbled on my end. Can you repeat Carl was garbled earlier.
Yes,
The
sir.
question is about technology.
Yes, sir. So
well,
as
of
we
course,
enter the new, yes, sir.
as we enter the new normal. Well,
Yes, sir.
as I said earlier, if you look at the projections of investment banks for the next 15 years, whether we like it or not, major changes in technology, not in any particular field, whether agriculture or manufacturing, but in technology in general, biotechnology, digitalization, robotics, artificial intelligence. This will disrupt a lot of industries. Now, we need to manage those disruptions by early on monitoring and planning on the impact of these changes. It's there, whether we like it or not. I just saw a video on orchard management. There in the States, they have this robot that can prune on its own. That can prune. They already have a prototype of a caterpillar-looking small robot that can prune orchards. What will be the impact on that on labor? And that is why agri-processing will be necessary, so that your excess labor in primary agriculture at the farm level will have something to do, will be employed, because by nature it is natural. As agriculture develops, it will adopt new technologies, it will mechanize, and you will need less labor. Normally in a normal economy, your excess labor will go to your manufacturing, to your agri-processing and your services. The only thing that saved us in the last 3 decades has been overseas employment. I am repeating myself, overseas employment, BPO services, and tourism. No economy with the population our size can be viable, can be sustainably viable with that kind of reliance on services, especially when it is driven by demand from outside of your country. That is why we are having problems right now. The impact of COVID has been aggravated by returning OFWs, by disrupted BPO services, and especially tourism. Because of the restrictions, we cannot allow foreign tourists. And that is why we really need to make sure that agriculture and ultimately manufacturing should succeed. And it requires a change of mindset. It is not merely at the farm level a change of technology, but more importantly, a change of mindset. Technology is important, don't get me wrong. If you are able to meet some of our members, they, especially those who still have some funds after this crisis, they talk of they're at the cutting edge of so many things. Agri-energy, for example, converting the waste of converting chicken manure into electricity and ultimately into soil ameliorants, things like those. And happily, I can mention this to everyone. Happily, there are a lot of people right now going into this into agriculture. That is to respond to in PCAFI, in the Philippine Chamber of Agriculture and Food Inc. Our president, Danny Fausto, he has encouraged the slow formation of of the youth in agriculture. They started with their children and grandchildren who are at least that portion of their families who are enthusiastic about agriculture. Because remember, not all people will be interested in going to the farm. They would rather be in offices. There are people like that. Iba-iba ang tao eh.
Mhm.
So, if we talk of technology, we need the DOST, even the DA, those involved in the biosciences should be actively monitoring what's happening there. It's very exciting now outside of our country. There's talk of regenerative agriculture. They are right now in the United States and portions of Europe, portions of Latin America and Africa. They're able to minimize their use of synthetic inputs like pesticides, fertilizer, because they have a new way of. It's not necessarily equipment. It is a new way. The more quote unquote technology, the more important thing is a new way of doing things and looking at things. We've always
Yes,
viewed
sir.
fertility as adding fertilizer, adding NPK. Right now, there's a portion in of the U.S. Department of Agriculture who are encouraging farmers to look at fertility from the point of view of photosynthesis. It's a long discussion, but it is very interesting. It's very exciting right now.
Mm.
If you study these things, unfortunately, you need an ecosystem inside your country that supports that. And the United States is very efficient at that, at supporting their farmers, at supporting their consumers. Their farm bill is about subsidies for their farmers and subsidies for consumers. Tayo wala nun. For the last 2.5 decades dito,
Yes,
the
sir.
most incentivized activity aside from drugs and illegal gambling ay importation. Sorry, Sek, ha? Talagang ganyan ang buhay. Hindi ako makatiis eh.
Mr. Inchiong, ang lalim ng hugot natin. Ha? Pero okay lang, ramdam namin kayo. And
Gusto ko,
yeah, Mr. Secretary, go ahead.
yeah, alam niyo, one focus that I've been giving itong last 9 months or so. Nasa almost 10 months na tayo, di ba? So, ang isa ay yung sinabi rin ni Atty. Inciong na mga kabataan, ang mga younger generation, the millennials so to speak, are now more interested in agriculture and in agribusiness. I see that. And there are new programs that we have put in place since I started as the servant leader dito. Number one, para sa mga young, the millennials who are interested, those who have even just ideas in their minds, if they want to create proof of concept, we now have what we call the business incubation in agriculture. So kagaya yung nangyari sa Silicon Valley, we will give 500,000 pesos as a grant to any individual, much more the younger generation, who have ideas and can build a proof of concept. 500,000 yan grant. Now, kung gusto nila, after having this proof of concept, at gusto nila gawin na business nila, agribusiness nila, mayroon din tayong loan program called Kaya. Kaya is capital access for young agripreneurs. At they can borrow the level they want to develop and put in practice, commercialize their proof of concept. From there, mayroon rin tayong anyo yung agri-negosyo program, loan program. They can borrow a size 10 million, zero interest, payable in 5 years. So lahat ito, we are putting this up para lang maingganyo, ma-encourage yung mga younger generation now to really come back to farming. We have 2.5 billion for these loan programs, plus about $500 million for the agribusiness incubation program para lang ma-encourage ito younger generation. Mayroon pa isang programa, gusto namin to have yung Maya. Ano ang ibig sabihin ng Maya? Mentoring and attracting the youth in agriculture. New graduates or those na wala pang trabaho na magagaling at may interest with passion and energy to join agriculture. So may on-the-job training program natin, ito nga Maya, for 6 months. And we are recruiting starting soon, for the whole country. Bali, 3 millennials or 3 youth in every district, political district, to monitor the projects of agriculture and to learn, actual experiences in farming. Nandun sila sa kanayunan. So we are recruiting about 1,000 of these millennials, and there are 2 tracks. After 6 months, they can either join the department kasi maraming vacant positions dito pa sa agriculture at mabigyan po sila ng loan program to go to agribusiness. So that's how we love the younger generation today.
Mr. Secretary, I love it that you are exerting effort to make agriculture sexy again to the younger generation. That's very important to reverse the phenomenon that Mr. Inciong earlier mentioned na neglected ang agriculture. Mr. Inciong, just very briefly, follow up lang dun sa point nyo kanina. If there is one thing, okay, total, nandiyan na rin si Secretary Dart nakikinig, kung merong iisang bagay lang na makakatulong sa ating poultry industry, anong pagbabago ang gusto nyong makita? Whether sa industriya ninyo, sa samahan ninyo, or sa external environment, Kung si Secretary Dar ay isang genie na makapag-grant ng wish ninyo, ano ang isang hihilingin ninyo?
Sige, attorney.
Parang alam nyo na, Secretary.
Alam mo, mapupulaan ako ng mga kasama ko sa PKP at saka sa ibang multi-sectoral formation na if I only focus on poultry. And it will be useless if I focus on poultry and I do not involve yellow corn, coconut oil, because these are our inputs. And if I do not involve the people in the palengke, ultimately, this system, this agriculture, in order for people to have a chance to succeed, the government, especially our economists, must believe in its people. That is why Secretary Dar must be given a chance to fight for us at the level of the cabinet. This is, you invited an expat from Thailand who heads a major poultry company, broiler industry company in Thailand. We asked him, what is the difference between the Philippines and Thailand? Is it technology? What? He said, it's simple, it's mindset. Because the Thais, their government, their economists believe in their people. Dito, yung mga ekonomista natin, nag-iimbita pa ng mga dayo. Halimbawa, ano nangyari sa poultry industry? Noong year 2000, there were about 6 or 7 Filipino major companies who were members of the Philippine Association of Broiler Integrators. Right now, there are only 2 left of the major integrators. And who replaced the Filipino companies? Foreign companies. There are people within DA and outside DA who criticize us for being protectionist. How can we be protectionist? There are already 4 or 5 foreign companies in the game. Cargill Jollibee, CP of Thailand. These are major companies, conglomerates. There are companies from the People's Republic of China. New Hope. There's this Iswin Hope or something. Then there's a Yonghap of Thailand. And then they criticize us for being protectionist. No. These same companies whom they invited, to whom they gave incentives, which they did not give to us, they are also losing money. Not only because of this crisis, because of the insane economic ideas of a lot of our economists. They have this notion that if you liberalize importation, you will encourage competition, and by some miracle, local people will become competitive. That does not happen.
Okay.
Because you
I
need
see.
an ecosystem for that. I am sorry, but this is important. If we
Okay
do not
lang.
change our mindset, we will not succeed the way Thailand, Indonesia. You know the Indonesians? They came to us during our poultry show. They are worried because after 24 years of WTO, at last, American chicken is about to land in Indonesia. Mumurahin ko sana eh. Nagrereklamo kayo sa gobyerno ninyo. Nag-delay ng the Indonesian government was able to delay for 24 years the landing of American chicken in Indonesian shores. Dito from day 1 ng WTO, sinalanta na yung mga lahat ng sektor ng agrikultura. Tinamaan. Sabi ko nga kay Jogi San Diego, may sira tong mga Indonesian na to. Galit na galit sa gobyerno nila pero ang galing. Kuruin mo, it took them 24 years to accommodate American chicken. Tayo bugbog kaagad. And then we are criticized for being competitive, for being not having the necessary competitive spirit, being protectionist. Talaga magagalit ka eh. If you have to experience 2 decades of exposure to the Department of Agriculture, I'm sorry, Mr. Secretary, if you experience 2 decades of exposure to the Department of Agriculture, you will sound like me. Otherwise, you have a problem.
Mr. Secretary, as you can see.
Iba na ngayon.
Wow,
Iba na lang,
that's good to
okay.
hear. That's good to hear. Iba na ngayon.
Yeah, we are listening, if you analyze my policy pronouncement, we need now, as a result of this pandemic, to really level up domestic food production. And what are the implications of this? You need to build up your local industry. So yun ang isang tinututukan ni Atty. Inciong. We'll see to it that you grow, but to grow and with also the use of, say, technologies that can lower your cost of production so that we can compete. Palagi ganun naman. So we are there to support the local industries to grow and be competitive. As we are now doing for rice farmers, we will do the same for the other commodities. We are not just looking now on production per se, but the whole value chain system, the food supply chain. Nandyan na ang broader mindset ng Department of Agriculture because there should be many sources of income for the farmers, not only in production, but also in value adding and also in marketing their produce if they are done collectively by the farmers themselves, by the poultry raisers themselves. So, naudlot lang tayo dito sa COVID-19, pursuing all these new strategies that we have strengthened further and hoping that, yes, ay tayo bigyan ng lakas at lahat po na nandyan na suporta nagaling sa gobyerno at saka sa private sector and the academe working as one to really build up and unlock now the potential of Philippine agriculture and agribusiness.
I like the dynamics of our conversation. On one hand, we have a very passionate advocate in Mr. Inciong, and on the other hand, we have a calm and composed Secretary of Agriculture ready to address. But at this point, we'd like to take some questions from the... Oh, go ahead, Mr. Inciong, please.
I would just like to make a request of the Inquirer and of the audience. Take a look at what has happened in the last 25 years. Imports were supposed to make food affordable, increase employment, and develop the sector. Not only agriculture and manufacturing, but what has happened?
Well, are they
Objectively, look at
affordable?
it. Affordable ba pagkain? Hindi. Affordable ba ang pagkain? Kasi ang mura niyan, the importers are availing of the subsidies, taking advantage of the subsidies given by the United States and other developed countries. Pinapasa ba sa consumer? Hindi. Samantala, yung sa farm gate dito, ang layo na. Halimbawa, itong sa manok, nitong COVID, sa Nueva Ecija at Pangasinan, umabot ng 25 pesos per kilo ang live broiler. Naramdaman ba sa retail? Hindi. Tapos, ang nangyayari pa, kami pa ang sinisisi ng publiko kuminsan dahil naiuunawaan naman namin, hindi nila gamay yung industriya. At hindi naman kami tinutulungan sa mahabang panahon na ipaliwanag yan ng gobyerno. Yan ang problema. I will leave it at that. Sana tingnan ng malalim ng Inquirer, ng ibang mga pag-aralan ninyo. Kung talagang mabuti para sa mamimili yung imports. Hindi eh. Hindi eh. Yun ang contention ko dyan. Haharapin ko kahit sino dyan.
Yes, sir. Count on us.
So, very lively na ng discussion natin. Yes, sir. So, sir, siguro now we'll move on to viewers' questions naman, no?
Go ahead, Carl.
So, let's start with the question from Sir Dante S. De Lima and Juju Hanja. So, they have the same question po, no? And it's about yung patubig daw. So, sabi ni Sir Dante dito, sana unahin ang basic, yung patubig. 50% lang ang potential irrigatable area and 80% lang ang functional. Sana unahin nyo muna yon. And then Mr. Juju said, I found out that farms located on remote and higher elevations have difficulty accessing water for farm irrigation. So ano daw po ang magagawa natin to address this, sir?
Okay,
this for Secretary Dar.
Tama po. Irrigation, I agree entirely with Dante De Lima. And alam niyo, NIA is with another oversight cabinet secretary, Carlos siya. But we presently are having a task group on food security and looking at irrigation as one major focus. At alam natin na there are still about 1.1 million hectares already devoted to rice production na wala pang irrigation systems. So at the rate the government has been developing and investing in national irrigation systems, it will take another 20 years to develop this 1.1 million hectares. So I have proposed to Secretary Carlo Nograles the possibility of looking at public-private partnership under a build and transfer system para mas mapabilis if you can tackle having to develop in the next 5 years, for example, the national irrigation systems for 1.1 million hectares, that will be a breakthrough. So yes, that's why kung sana may katanungan na kaya ba natin to sustain 100% rice self-sufficiency, hindi pa pwede kung hindi natin maisaayos muna itong irrigation systems natin. That's plain and simple. So what is the department doing? We are involved in the development of what we call small water irrigation systems. Maraming modalities yan. May small water impounding project, mayroon small farm reservoir, or in general rainwater harvesting, including springs development. And now the latest technology is the solar powered irrigation system. There is a discussion presently, I think tomorrow, in its final stage. We are getting a concessional loan from a group of companies from Israel. They will give us this concessional loan of about 280 million euros. And this will be used to step up the construction of solar-powered irrigation system. There are two modules there. One module good for 8 hectares, the other module good for 35 hectares. So we are now starting to list down where we can put up all these solar-powered irrigation system. This will be a good investment to start itong last quarter of the year.
Sir, just to
Um,
follow up, sir,
yeah, go
no?
ahead, Carl.
Yeah.
Ano ito?
The 280 million euros. Yes, sir. Where will that come from, sir?
Yung Israel.
280 million. Oh, Israel. Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, we have one more question here from one of our viewers. Mr. Jim Hizon asks, why is the BAI, I think the Bureau of Animal Industry, asking local poultry producers to limit their production while simultaneously increasing poultry imports? It seems counterintuitive. What are we missing here? Nako, Mr. Inchiong, baka mainis na naman kayo. Mr. Secretary.
Ako na lang sasagot para hindi natataas yung blood pressure ni...
Go ahead.
Yeah, there was a miscommunication somewhere. I think that I have already mentioned to Attorney Inciong, let the poultry industry continue. We will, every step of the way, assist and help whatever we can. Meanwhile, we are strengthening our requirements in terms of the issuances of import clearances for poultry products that are not available here. So ganun po, there is coexistence. But I would like to assure Bong na let's develop the poultry sector continuously.
Fantastic. Guys, I think we might have been carried away because we are now about 15 minutes over time. And I can see marami pa rin tayong viewers, but we will have to wrap up and let our two guests attend to their appointments. That was a very introspective discussion we just had, and we received many valuable insights and strategies for the industry going forward. We will be closing this event with a couple of remarks from our speakers. First, let's hear from Secretary Dar.
Okay
Please,
po, hopefully the pandemic on COVID-19 brought a new normal that we have now to take this challenge into an opportunity for the sector of agriculture to show its real contribution to the economy. One of the sectors that have been identified by NEDA and the Department of Finance that would have a big impact in rebooting in the recovery program of the economy is in the sector of agriculture and food. And I believe that we have the stimulus package for agriculture ready. We have submitted to both houses, the House of Representatives and the Senate, and hoping that in due time, when we have the wherewithal to support this stimulus package, that this will be the momentum with which we really can really reboot the Philippine agriculture. So I would like to close by saying we aspire for a science-based, inclusive, resilient, and market-oriented Philippine agriculture. And no pandemic can bury our dreams and aspirations. No lockdown can slow us down. Let us turn challenges into opportunities to survive and move forward towards a food secure and resilient Philippines with prosperous farmers and fisherfolk. Maraming salamat po sa ating lahat.
Thank you, Secretary. So maybe we can have the closing statement from Mr. Inciong, sir.
Carl, Dax, thank you. Mr. Secretary, maraming salamat
Thank you,
sa
sir.
pasensya. Hindi ko na pahabain. I would just recommend a reading. There was this chief economist of the World Bank based in Beijing about 2003. He wrote China, Threat or Opportunity. And lengthily, he described there how China succeeded, especially in agriculture. And agriculture was their first step. I recommend to our readers and to Carl and Dax and probably Mr. Secretary, you can recommend it to the Bureau of Animal Industry also to read this work of Dr. Ramgopal Agarwala. An Indian economist, he analyzed how China succeeded. We need not reinvent the wheel. We only need to benchmark how other countries did it. Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam. Vietnam is roaring along. Taiwan, all of our neighbors. First of all, they did not believe the nonsense, the double talk, the forked tongue of the Americans and the Europeans. Alam nilang nandadaya ang Amerika at ang Europa tungkol sa free trade. For all of their talk about free trade, to use the language of the late Secretary Angara, the Americans spoke with forked tongue. Free trade on the one hand, then protectionist on the other hand through subsidies and non-tariff barrier. Same with Europe. Why should the Filipino people martyr itself to an ideology that even its proponents do not follow? That is all. Good day, Dax and Carl. Mr. Secretary, maraming salamat.
Maraming
po.
salamat to our speakers. It's good to know that the industry has a good future going ahead with passionate advocates like Mr. Inciong and rational people in government like Secretary Dar. Carl.
Salamat
So I guess
po.
that sums it up for our speakers' closing remarks. Before we end this webinar, we would like to thank everyone who watched this webinar. Thank you once again for being part of INQlusive. This is produced by the Philippine Daily Inquirer and Inquirer.net, and we would like to thank our sponsors today as well. So thank you to PMFTC Incorporated for this webinar. Dax.
To our viewers, thank you very much for joining this insightful discussion, for helping us make it successful and fruitful. We promise you that there will be more to come going forward.
Yes,
Once
exactly.
again, this is Dax Lucas from the Philippine Daily Inquirer and my co-host Carl Ocampo. Thank you for tuning in to INQlusive, the Inquirer webinar series. See you again soon.
Thank you.